Hello, everybody. My name is John Grosvenor. I've got the pleasure of chairing this session on non-pharma interventions. I'm an ADI board member and the treasurer of ADI. And therefore, I just have great pleasure in chairing this session. So we've got speakers from all around the world with some interesting topics and some interesting things to talk about. So our first speaker we have is Kate Tan from Singapore. So Kate, I'd ask you to put your video and so on and share your screen and share your presentation with us.
Hi everyone, good afternoon or evening wherever you are. So I'm Kate and I'm from Singapore, and I undertook this research while I was working at Alzheimer's Disease Association in Singapore, and I currently have a bachelor's in psychology. And although I'm not working in ADA anymore, I would like to present on their behalf. So today I'll be presenting on our study titled The Impact of Arts-Based Programs in Dementia Care, which evaluated the Arts and Dementia program that was initiated by ADA. This study was led by co-principal investigators, Mrs. Teresa Lee and Dr. Donald Yeo, as seen in this picture here, and there I am sitting at the back. So the study was also made possible by many others, including the National Arts Council Singapore, and also many partners such as Esplanade, Peranakan Museum, Malay Heritage Center, artists and volunteers, ADA staff and research team, and also participants for their voluntary and active involvement. The Arts and Dementia program was first developed in 2013 with the support from the National Arts Council. So there were three objectives of the program, which was to foster an enriching, purposeful, and positive engagement for people living with dementia, to offer respite for family care partners, and to reduce stigma and promote a supportive and dementia-inclusive environment in the community. So notice how we use inclusive rather than friendly, and that's because we want to enable people with dementia to continue engaging with and are part of their social networks in the community. Hence, for our study, we wanted to evaluate if the program had a specific impact on the well-being of persons with dementia, on family care partners, and their perceived caregiving stress and gains, and also on the attitudes and perspectives of the community towards dementia. There are three pillars of the program. It's based on the principles of person-centered care, and which is to foster identity, meaning, and pleasure for people living with dementia. This is just to name a few. The program also aims to transform caregiving to care partnering, and that's because caring for a loved one with dementia is a journey. So instead of just providing care, it's an interdependent partnership where both parties give and receive. And finally, to create a supportive social environment that is dementia-friendly, dementia-inclusive, and dementia-enabling. For the first objective of our research, we utilized an observer-rated scale, which is the dementia care mapping. Well-being of the people living with dementia were measured during baseline, which was held at ADA's dementia centers, and this was also measured during the program. One of the measures in the DCM is the mood and engagement value, which reflects the state of well-being of the participant while engaging in an activity or behavior. Mood and engagement values are rated on a 6-point scale, ranging from +5, indicating exceptional well-being, to -5, which indicates apathy or withdrawal. There are various activities in the Arts and Dementia program, and I will share some highlights from the findings. So one of the activities was to visit cultural heritage centers, and we found that not only were the mood and engagement values of the people with dementia higher during the program, it also increased over the sessions, which eventually peaked at the last session. During the program, the people with dementia also expressed joy and contentment when participating in these activities. For example, one of them said, "The museum is beautiful, the artifacts are beautiful too. Thank you for bringing me here." Another activity that was in the Arts and Dementia program was the Sing Out Loud, which is a community engagement program by ADA in partnership with Esplanade. Esplanade is Singapore's National Performing Arts Center and has hosted a range of performances, including music, dance, and theatre. The Sing Out Loud program was conceptualized in 2016 and aims to provide transformative and meaningful experiences to people with dementia through reminiscence of songs and vocal singing. Similarly, mood and engagement values were higher during the program as compared to baseline, and this peaked during the showcase performance. Some other activities that were in the program included photography, where people with dementia visited places of interest in the community and learned photography skills. Memories Cafe is where people with dementia and their care partners engage in music, dance, and singing in accessible community spaces. For example, this session was held in Over-the-Counter Cafe, which is located within the Singapore National Library. The second objective of our study was to evaluate if the program had an impact on perceived caregiving stress and gains, and this was conducted using a focus group discussion. During the discussion, care partners shared that they noticed positive changes in their loved ones during and after attending the program. There was greater social engagement, contentment, and the development of new interests. The program also provided care partners with both long and shorter-term benefits, and this include meaningful respite and making caregiving easier and more manageable. So one care partner shared that the singing had a big impact on him, maybe because of the stage. It brought him alive. Even when he came home, he was still humming. Another said, what I appreciate is he enjoyed himself, and being there, I could see these moments. The third objective of our study was to examine how involvement in the arts alongside people living with dementia could help to promote positive attitudes. We conducted a mixed method approach by using both self-reported measures and focus group discussion. We recruited a total of 75 artists and volunteers who were involved in the program, and this fell into three categories: those that have not participated in any program before, and therefore termed new volunteers, those that were involved in the program for less than 3 months, and those that were involved for more than 3 months. We found that individuals who were involved in the program had significantly higher hopefulness towards dementia, especially those who were involved for more than 3 months. We also found that participants who were involved in the program, whether it's less or more than 3 months, were more likely to advocate a person-centered approach towards dementia as compared to those with no prior involvement. During the focus group discussion, one participant said, I could see that music is a universal language, and it brought me so much joy to see the performers enjoying themselves with movement, singing, rhythm, and songs. Another said that don't talk about what you cannot do, but what you can do. There are still many things that they can do. In summary, the arts provide a safe and fun space of self-discovery, interaction, and personal growth for everyone involved, be it people living with dementia, their care partners, or the artists and volunteers. People with dementia do not require any knowledge or skills in the arts to experience the benefits of the program, and these benefits were also extended to their care partners. Greater involvement of the artists and volunteers in the program alongside people with dementia was also associated with more positive attitudes towards dementia. There are some recommendations for future research. A longitudinal study could be conducted with care partners and members of the community participating in the arts-based programs. Future studies could also evaluate specific aspects of these programs that are crucial to their success. For example, exploring what makes an activity meaningful for people with dementia. This can provide insights to the elements of interaction or engagement that works, why it works, for whom, and when. So before I end off, I would like to show you a short video clip which nicely sums up the Arts and Dementia program. And with that, I've come to the end of my presentation. If you have any questions regarding the research, you can contact us at the email shown here. Thank you.
Okay, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you. And it's so good to see some people laughing and smiling and enjoy. And the line that I'm going to remember from your presentation is focus on what you can do, not what you can't do.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Min-Jiuan from Taiwan.
Okay. Can I start?
Oh yeah, you can whenever you're ready.
Yeah,
Okay.
good to go.
Thank you. Hello everyone, I'm Min-Jiuan Shiu. My presentation is Cognitive and Fitness Community Program for People with Dementia. I'm an occupational therapist. I'm from Taiwan. Now I work in SENSE branch of Taipei City Hospital, which is also known as Taipei City Psychiatry Center in Taiwan. Since 2007, the Ministry of Health and Welfare in Taiwan has started promoting the policy long-term care, and our hospital has been following this policy. Afterwards, the plan Prevent or Delay Disability for Elderly Care came up in 2017. And then we set a support center for people with dementia and their families, SPDF for short, at Taipei City Xinyi District Health Center for elders with dementia in 2019. The support center has been supported by the Ministry of Health and Welfare project funding and run by the Department of Occupational Therapy of Taipei City Hospital. The project host is the chief of the department, sent as the corresponding author of the abstract, and one operational therapist and I perform the project. I play a role as a case manager and also help arranging a variety of courses and activities, including cooking, dancing, music program, emotion regulation, etc., to suit the need and expectation of elders with dementia and those of their caregivers. Each Monday afternoon from June to September in 2019, we perform the Ministry of Health and Welfare number 46 program, Efficacy of the Combined Cognitive and Physical Training Programs for the Disabled and Demented Elderly. This program is based on the conception that physical activity done before cognitive training can prepare brain well and improve performance in cognitive tasks. And we invited a well-trained instructor to lead the demented elders with this program. People with dementia who had a clinical dementia rating score between 0.5 and 1.0 were recruited first. Finally, there were 16 enrolled participants. This cognitive and fitness community program consisted of 12 two-hour courses per week during 3 months. In the 2-hour course, 15 minutes were for initial warm-up, 45 minutes for physical fitness training, 15 minutes for break, and the final 45 minutes for cognitive training. Physical fitness exercises included stretching, strengthening, balancing, and aerobic exercise. The cognitive training included tasks demanding memory, attention, processing, speed, calculation, language, and executive function. And now you can see the detailed course content on the sheet. We use non-drug therapists and created new and interesting experiences for them. We hope to prevent and delay disability and to build a better quality life for people with dementia and their caregivers. Therefore, before and after the program, within a week, we used the Kihong checklist of Chinese version, KCLC for short, to screen the changes of their frailty degree. The KCLC has a good test-retest reliability and content validity. Additionally, it has good sensitivity and specificity. Moreover, we use a satisfaction questionnaire to know how they thought on this program. And then 16 people with dementia joined the cognitive and fitness community program. The average age was about 80 years old, and the oldest one was 90 years old. Male accounted for about 55% in the group. Among the participants, 9 were slightly male to male degree, and 7 were from moderate degree to severe degree. The average attendance was around 80%. In this course, the well-trained instructor was the leader, and I am one of the co-leaders to help the elders engage more in the group. Both before and during the program implemented, we had good communication with caregivers and the group leader, like a bridge between them. My co-worker and I concerned and discussed about the elders' interests, recent mood, eating, sleeping, and fitness condition with the caregivers. The caregivers also gave us feedback of the course when we told them unusual conditions we've noticed about the elders. On the other hand, we discussed the elders' engagement and performance in the daily life or during the course with the group leader to see if anything needed to be modified. For example, we changed the seat arrangement to avoid the elders sitting next to the one he didn't like. Also, we changed the distance they had to go front to back in the physical tasks and number they need to calculate in the cognitive tasks. All depended on the ability of the whole group or divisions. During the fitness session, there were 3 people with dementia that needed physical assistance by caregivers, and 1 using a wheelchair with transfer limitation. During the cognitive session, there were 7 people with moderate or severe dementia that needed more assistance than the others to complete the tasks. Approximately 60% participants could complete the tasks in the session independently or with help, and the rest of the participants need the leader to adjust the difficulty of cognitive tasks. During the 12-course program, feedback and appreciation from participants and caregivers gave us lots of acknowledgement. Additionally, the result of Kihong checklist didn't show significant difference of frailty between pre-test and post-test, indicating that if combined cognitive and physical training programs may delay disability of the demented elderly. Finally, the satisfaction questionnaire also showed that the elderly and caregivers were satisfied with the cognitive and fitness community program. Especially, they thought our courses were various and interesting, which inspired the elders a lot. The caregivers said that the elder liked our place, desiring to come and have more interaction with other ones. Moreover, courses in our support center somehow regularize their daily life and help the elderly sleeping better at night. Benefits expected of the cognitive and fitness activities include improvement of participation and performance of daily activities. Moreover, we believe this program can create a good quality life for people with dementia and their caregivers. Thank you for your listening, and I hope you enjoy my presentation. God bless you.
Min-Jiuan, that was brilliant. Thank you very much. And it's a very good reminder that we've got to remember physical fitness as well as cognitive fitness. Is a message I take from your presentation. So thank you very much, and thank you for your time. Okay, we move on to Min-Jiuan. If you could put yourself on mute and so on, that would be really good. And we move to our next speaker, Iracema from Ireland.
Good morning. Thank you very much, John, for chairing the session and the invitation to speak here. The title of my presentation is SENSE-Cog Asia, Promoting Health for Ears and Mind in South Asia. And I will be presenting some preliminary findings from a feasibility study. As people here at ADI will be very aware, about more than 66% of the world's population with dementia live in lower and middle income countries. In lower and middle income countries, stigma for dementia is often very high, and there may be a lack of understanding of dementia as being outside of the normal aging process. And very often, there are limited health and social care ecosystems for older people's mental and cognitive health. Recently, with colleagues, we developed a roadmap to develop dementia research capability and capacity in Pakistan as a model for lower and middle income countries. And key amongst these research priorities emerged that we need to do more to develop pragmatic and resource-sparing interventions for people living with dementia. So as a result of this, we looked around to see where we could find an appropriate intervention that we might adapt and implement in certain South Asian contexts. And we found the SENSE-Cog, the SENSE-Cog program, which is a program that I've been leading for the past 5 years in Europe. Part of this program, which is about promoting health for eyes, ears, and mind, is a definitive randomized controlled trial of hearing and vision rehabilitation in people living with dementia that's taking place in 5 European countries. This is an important topic because data are emerging that hearing and vision impairment worsens cognitive decline and worsens dementia. As you can see here, this is some of the outputs from the SENSE-Cog program. We can see that where we have an aging-related cognitive decline, if we have on top of that a single sensory impairment, either hearing or vision, as you can see the blue line, the trajectory of cognitive decline accelerates. If you have 2 sensory impairments, in other words, hearing and vision, that cognitive trajectory is even sharper, as you can see here. And these data have been replicated in European, English, and American data sets. So the imperative to look at this topic is there. So in the Asian context, what we wanted to do was to adapt the SENSE-Cog intervention for hearing and vision rehabilitation to see whether it would be helpful in supporting people living with dementia. Our objective was to test the feasibility and acceptability of this multifaceted support intervention. And our project plan had 3 phases. Phase 1 was capacity building and capability building in order to deliver the trial, as well as patient and public involvement, or PPI. Phase 2 was about adapting the intervention to the cultural context, and phase 3 was actually delivering the trial. So we chose 7 sites to undertake the study in South Asia, 3 in Pakistan, 3 in India, and 1 in Bangladesh. And here you can see our study teams. Our teams in Chennai, Mysore, Bangalore, Karachi, Lahore, Rawalpindi, and also Dhaka. So phase 1, capacity building. Using a theory of change framework, we targeted goals in 6 domains to build capacity in order to undertake the trial. We focused on people, in other words, training the teams. We focused on research integrity and governance, study delivery skills, international collaborative working with an equity perspective, patient and public involvement, and also very importantly for success of the trial, development of pathways, the logistics pathway to access the intervention, the referral pathway from clinical settings or other sites in order to manage recruitment, and also links to developing or to existing or developing services for people with dementia. Phase 1 also involved developing a patient and public involvement panel, or PPI panel. Patient and public involvement is very well known in English-speaking countries, but less so outside of English-speaking countries. And the principle here is that in undertaking clinical research, we do this together with people rather than to them or for them. And in order to do this, we need to gather together stakeholders from the public and the patient cohorts in order to work alongside our researchers to define and support the study. So we did this in all our sites, developing the SENSE-Cog Asia Research Advisory Teams, or RATs, and each team in each site undertook a different activity on what we call the Welcome Trust Public Engagement Onion. In other words, it could be engagement, it could be involvement, it could be a public-facing event about dissemination of information about the research, all the way to working very closely as co-researchers to shape the activity. And this was very important to inform the intervention, adaptation, and study design. So here's an output of one of the PPI groups. They developed the SENSE-Cog Asia News to have a public-facing discussion about what we were doing in the research. In other words, to foster recruitment, to foster engagement, and also to raise awareness of dementia. So what exactly was the intervention? Well, a hearing support intervention here has multiple components. First of all, involves a full hearing assessment, the provision of hearing aids or other types of hearing supports, devices. A very important aspect of this is adherence support. In other words, it's not sufficient simply to give hearing aids or hearing devices to a person with dementia and hearing impairment. A very important aspect is the work of our hearing support practitioners to foster adherence, to help understand how to use the hearing aids or other devices to ensure that the person with dementia and their care partner can manage maintenance and so on. It also involved the sensory environment in which the person's living. In other words, looking at the acoustics and whether we can make a more sensory-friendly environment. It also involved communication training with a care partner of the person with dementia, and dementia awareness training in the participant dyad. What about implementation? Implementation of the intervention involved weekly visits from the sensory therapist or the hearing support practitioner across 8 weeks. It was home-based, taking place in the person's own home, and was supported by their care partner. In other words, the participant dyad. Phase 2 of our program involved cultural adaptation of the intervention. So was it appropriate to take a European intervention and put it into a South Asian context? We did a lot of work over 6 months with the teams in all 7 sites, as well as our PPI RATs, or research advisory teams, to undertake key changes. First of all, in regards to language, we needed to translate the intervention outcome measures and all the materials into the appropriate languages, whether it's Urdu, Hindi, and so on, or Bengali. We also changed the European intervention from hearing and vision to focusing on hearing only in order to simplify the intervention. We decided that we needed fewer visits and shorter visits. We also brought in a dementia education component for the care partner, recognizing that health literacy around dementia was very low. And we adapted all the materials, tools, information, and education leaflets to be contextually relevant. And finally, of course, we had to ensure that our outcome measures were appropriate and validated for the context. So finally, that brought us to phase 3, the actual trial, looking at feasibility and tolerability as the key outcomes. This was a single-arm, unblinded study, home-based in 7 sites in South Asia. Our participants included adults over the age of 60 with mild to moderate dementia due to common causes, in other words, Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, or mixed dementia. All participants had to have uncorrected or partially corrected hearing impairment according to certain criteria, and they had to have a study partner as part of the team. Now, as is common with 95% of dementia clinical research at the moment, our study also was affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. As a result, we've had to reduce our 7 sites to 2, because these 2 sites in Pakistan, Lahore and Karachi, were ahead of the other sites in terms of setup, so they could get a lot of work done and start recruitment before the pandemic resulted in close down of clinical sites. All the other sites are still not operating, which is why excuse me, I'll be presenting the preliminary findings from these 2 sites in Pakistan. We amended the protocol by reducing the sample size, by shifting all the outcome assessments to remote, and all the hearing support practitioner visits to remote as well. So what exactly were the procedures? Following consent and screening, we undertook a baseline assessment. We then undertook a full hearing evaluation of all participants with fitting of hearing aids or other hearing devices and basic aftercare. Our hearing support practitioner then worked with the person with dementia and their care partner for 8 to 10 weeks to focus on adherence support, home environmental modifications, in other words, looking at acoustics and sensory environments, dementia education, and communication training. We did a post-intervention follow-up and a subsequent follow-up a month later. The screening involved the Urdu version of the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, or the MOCA battery, or equal to or greater than 10 and adapted for educational level. And we also had certain hearing cutoffs using this very simple device called the Hear Check, which detects clinically significant hearing impairment. Our outcomes. We had a number of outcomes. We looked at feasibility, tolerability, acceptability. We tested recruitment, and we looked at the logistic circuits and how feasible that was. The main outcome for our study was to come up with a go, no-go signal for a definitive trial. In other words, is it worth pursuing this any further? Is it feasible? Is it tolerated? Is it worthwhile? We looked at all these outcomes using a range of evaluation tools, including questionnaires, participant diaries, logbooks, and semi-structured interviews. We also undertook a dementia outcomes battery appropriate to language and setting, including outcomes for the person with dementia, as well as their care partner, as well as cost effectiveness. So what did we find? In terms of feasibility, we found that our recruitment was a little bit slow, and that certain measures need to be put into place to increase that. And part of the reason, the main reason, was because we didn't find a lot of established dementia clinics where we could find recruits from. So this was about 2/3 of what was expected. We had about a 35% screen failure rate, which we could probably do better on. The intervention delivery, we found that all components were received and enacted as intended and completed by nearly all the dyads. So this was a very positive finding. Our work in the logistics circuit identified certain practical difficulties which need to be addressed and need some modification. And finally, our data entry. 92% completed data, so missingness was relatively low, and 75% of diary entries were completed, suggesting an acceptable outcome. What about tolerability and acceptability of the intervention itself? We had no serious adverse events. Our Likert self-ratings by participants on effort and fatigue were within a priori target ranges. Likewise, acceptability, in other words, understanding, motivation, sense of achievement, being involved in the trial, were all within a priori target ranges. So that was very positive. And there were no concerns about the outcomes battery, duration, or complexity. We also undertook some qualitative interviews with care partners, 8 in Urdu and 2 in Punjabi. And certain key themes came out. And I'll just share some of those outcomes with you. So these were some of the quotations. Following the intervention, we saw a high degree of acceptability. For example, the person with dementia is 100% confident in using them, as reported by the care partner. Improved functional ability. So there's a lovely anecdote here about a care partner talking about the person, the care recipient with dementia, saying she had a hen's cage before the death of my father-in-law, but then she removed it. Now she's busy with the hens again and also takes care of my younger child sometimes. So she attributed this important functional improvement to the intervention and being able to hear better and interact better. Here's one about nighttime disturbance, which got better. Here about the care partner burden being reduced, improved socialization, and increased self-efficacy. Also increased knowledge and awareness. So all these qualitative outcomes following the intervention of providing the hearing aid and the hearing support therapist were very positive. We also undertook the effectiveness battery. Now, this being a very small sample size and of course uncontrolled, there's very little that we can determine here in terms of actual effectiveness, but what we were looking for, whether the battery was appropriate and also whether it was sensitive to change. Our main outcome that we were interested in, matching the European study, was a measure of quality of life, or the DEMCOL, which is an 8-item instrument covering multiple domains of quality of life. And what we found, as you can see here, significant improvement from baseline to post-intervention, and that seemed to be maintained following the end of the intervention. Now, in terms of neuropsychiatric aspects, in other words, behavioral disturbance, a significant change from baseline to post-intervention. Again, we have to interpret these numbers with caution because it's not controlled, but it tells us that there is a signal of change and it's going in the right direction. So, bringing this all together, what we really wanted to establish is whether we have enough information and whether it's worth proceeding to a definitive trial. So our traffic light system essentially was red, do not proceed, it's not feasible, number 2, or amber, undertake further work or adaptations, and number 3, go ahead, green light, proceed. So we have concluded we are in the amber phase here. First of all, that the trial procedures are feasible, that the intervention is accepted and tolerated. The logistic circuit is broadly feasible, but areas of improvement have been identified. The recruitment needs to be faster and contingency plans have to be put in place. The exclusion appears to work with a 35% screen fail rate. We also found that some outcome scales were not suitable for the study and these require revision. In conclusion, feasibility studies of low-cost, easy-to-deliver and culturally adapted interventions are essential in laying the groundwork for subsequent definitive effectiveness and/or implementation trials for people living with dementia in lower and middle-income countries, particularly because very often awareness of and resources for dementia are limited. Further work in our other South Asian sites is ongoing, and I would just like to take this opportunity to thank our very hardworking and lovely team of the SENSE-Cog Asia researchers. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for your presentation, which is actually very interesting in many ways, and something that we should all remember ourselves. The other centuries do have an impact on dementia. There's absolutely no two ways about it. So thank you for your presentation and working your way through that. Next up as our speaker, so if you can unmute yourself and get your screen. There you are.
So thank you, John, and greetings everyone from New Zealand. My name's Catherine Hall and I'm the Chief Executive of Alzheimer's New Zealand, and I'm delighted to have this opportunity. I don't know if I'm speaking in your afternoon, morning or evening, but I'm delighted to have this opportunity to present this research that Alzheimer's New Zealand commissioned and published last year. And what we were really looking for with this research is to understand more about the impact that dementia has. So we focused on 4 research questions. So we wanted to know about the experience of living with dementia. We wanted to understand more about the extent to which the services that people were receiving were making a difference. We wanted to understand how people went about living their best possible lives with dementia. And we also wanted to know what impact dementia had on the relationships that people have with family in particular. So people living with dementia guided the research throughout. We had a research advisory group that included people with dementia, and we also had input into the research from the Alzheimer's New Zealand advisory group, which includes people with dementia and care partners. The research also had formal ethical approval. There were 49 people participated in the research, both people with a diagnosis of dementia and care partners of people with dementia, and some participated together and some separately. And there is a very comprehensive report available on our website, and you can see the web address on the screen there. So I would really encourage you to have a look at that. But today I'm going to focus on what we think are the 5 key findings or highlights from the research. And first up, I want to look at that process of getting a diagnosis and finding out that you have dementia. For most, that journey starts in a gradual way as people start to realise that something isn't quite right. And many people reported putting off going to see the family doctor, and that often the trigger for that was a crisis or an intervention by family. The process to get a diagnosis was very slow. It did vary, but the slowness was something that was consistent. And we also found that frequently people didn't really trust the tests that they were receiving. And telling friends and family was quite difficult. As you would expect, the news was a shock for many. Many went to share that news with their friends and family, and the reaction wasn't always positive, and some friends and family withdrew or treated them differently as a result of the diagnosis. And the experience with family doctors also varied considerably. For some it was positive, and for others not so much. So people saw the interaction with the family doctor as being positive when the family doctor gave them time to process the news, gave them time to ask questions, when the family doctor knew about dementia, understood what was available, and made useful referrals for them. And this was in stark contrast to the support from the family doctor that people saw as being unhelpful. People reported family doctors being quite abrupt and unhelpful in the way that they shared the news, not giving them time to process the information, and they felt that added to the stress of the experience. They also frequently had the experience that you can see in this quote on the screen of feeling that they had been told to pack up their lives and wait to die. So the next area I want to focus on today is this question about what having dementia means to people, because most people didn't define themselves by the dementia. They still saw themselves as being intelligent, but becoming more forgetful or finding it difficult to find the right words or to communicate as effectively as they wanted to. So while forgetful, most describe themselves as still intelligent, still able to think and reason. Many grieved for what they felt they were losing because of the changes in their memory, the changes in their language, changes in balance and mobility. And they really grieved because they felt that those changes meant that they weren't able to be as independent as they really wanted to be. And many also talked a lot about how important they felt accepting that diagnosis was for them, their ability to start to focus on the future, to put the diagnosis in its place and to move on and start to focus on how they were going to live their best possible lives. And for those who were unable to reach that level of acceptance with the diagnosis, they often reported a real sense of hopelessness with their situation and with their diagnosis. Independence was also seen as being vitally important. Not that it was always easy. Those ongoing changes in cognition and language and balance and mobility and other things made it very hard for people often to maintain their independence and continue to have control over their lives. But it was something that was vitally important to people. And the people who were able to accept the diagnosis of dementia, they were able to then move on and to do some planning on their own and with their family about how they wanted their future journey with dementia to be and how they wanted to be supported by their family and also by the health system as that process developed. Often a key change as they were moving through that planning was to change where they were living. So many changed their homes. They might move somewhere that was closer to family, somewhere that was smaller or easier to manage or easier to live in, or they might move into assisted living or residential care. But they were making decisions early on in the journey so that they could retain control over those things. They also, many made a lot of changes in the way that they lived their day-to-day lives, and there's a great list of those in the research report. So do have a look at those because people have found those very helpful. We also found that people who were already using technology could continue to use that technology for quite some time into their journey with dementia. But what they really reported struggling with is learning how to use new technology. And there was one example in the study of somebody who got a new oven and in the end gave up cooking because they weren't able to learn how to use the new oven. And a similar story for somebody who got a new cell phone and couldn't learn how to use that. One of the things that they talked about a lot is how much they disliked having to give up their independence or limit their independence because of the changes from their dementia. But at the same time, they understood that for their families, their safety was vitally important too. And they really did understand the tension between those two things and that they needed to make some compromises as a result. But the thing that was vitally important to all of them was being able to continue to make choices about the things that were important for them. And they felt very strongly that with time, with the right information, and with the right support, they were able to continue to make decisions about really important things like where they lived, what kind of help and support they received, what kinds of activities they did, the decisions about when they might give up driving, and also decisions about when they might give up work with the right support and help. They also reported about the barriers to being able to live the way that they wanted to. And the most important of these was the stigma associated with dementia and the associated change in the way that family and friends often treated them. And that really got in the way of the way that they wanted to live. But the other thing that they found was a real barrier to them living the way they wanted to was that they couldn't always get the help and support from the health services that they felt they needed. So the research provided some really useful information about what it is that people with dementia want and need. And so they said what they wanted was for people to understand them, to accept them, to respect them, and to include them in their lives and in the things that were important to them. They wanted the time to be able to make the decisions that were important to them with the right information and the support so they could do so. They wanted to be able to get a diagnosis in a timely way and at a time that suited them. And then they wanted the kind of support that they felt they needed as they moved through those transitions that come with the journey of dementia. They wanted to be able to get the help and support that they need, and they wanted to get that help and support for their care partners as well. So that brings me to the end of my presentation on the research, but I want to finish up by talking about our Dementia Declaration, which was a piece of work that was happening at the same time as the research was happening. So this dementia declaration was developed by our advisory group made up of people living with dementia, people with a diagnosis and care partners. And they decided that they wanted to describe what they want and need to live their best possible lives. And I wanted to just talk about that very briefly, because I know that it's a bit small on the screen, but the things that this dementia declaration talked about are so close and so closely aligned to the things that were coming through the research that I thought it was worth drawing that to your attention. So what the advisory group said at about the same time as that we were doing the research on lived experience of dementia is they said that they wanted to have control over their lives. They said they wanted to have good quality health services to support them to live the lives that they wanted to live. They said that they needed a circle of support to surround them. They said they wanted to live in knowledgeable communities that included and accepted them, that they wanted to be actively engaged in and participate in their communities, that they wanted to have things like adequate housing and income, and that most importantly, that they wanted their presence to matter and they wanted to be loved. So that brings me to the end of my presentation this afternoon or this evening. So I just want to finish up with a whakatauki, or a proverb, and it goes like this. He aha te mea nui o te ao. What is the most important thing in the world? He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It is people, it is people, it is people. Thank you.
Catherine, that's really good. And I haven't seen your dementia declaration before, and I think it's really impressive. And you also made some really good points in your presentation, a reminder about diagnosis for all of us. I can remember a doctor saying to me, I don't like diagnosing people with dementia because I don't know what to do with them next, sort of such. So it's the support after a diagnosis. And we all know that early diagnosis does help people an awful lot. Yeah, so it's absolutely brilliant. Thank you. And control over lives and people. Sorry, I won't go on and on, but repeating your presentation, but thank you. Okay, thanks, Catherine. And then that brings us to the final one, Debbie. So you sort of get yourself, there you go. Yeah, yes, yeah. You're all set to go. Ready?
I am indeed, absolutely. Let me just share my presentation. Hello everyone, I'm Debbie Rozario, Global Clinical Marketing Director at a company called Arjo. I'm responsible for the global clinical team and have a background as a registered nurse before moving into the commercial world many years ago. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to speak during this session today. I'll be discussing the findings from users of a therapeutic multisensory chair and its ability to support people living with dementia in long-term care facilities. We'll also hear feedback from carers on their perception of the impact of using the chair on the quality of care delivered. From normal disclosure point of view, I can confirm, as I've mentioned earlier, I work as the Global Clinical Marketing Director for Arjo, a global healthcare company based in Malmö in Sweden. As an organisation, Arjo are very committed to improving the everyday lives of people affected by reduced mobility and age-related health challenges, and especially those living with dementia. The chair, which will be discussed and will be the focus of the session, is a product that is distributed by Arjo, and the international survey of users that was provided on the chair forms the basis of the study results, and that was carried out by an external company called the Medical Marketing Boutique based in Charleston, South Carolina, and they were responsible for lots of different aspects of the study, design, distribution, data collection and reporting. So, as I was saying, pharmacological interventions have been traditionally used in the treatment of distressing symptoms of dementia, but many studies have documented adverse effects of this sedative and antipsychotic drug use. The international consensus now proposes an escalating approach to symptom management with the use of a non-pharmacological approach as a first-line intervention. So anecdotally, we've received a lot of positive feedback that the multisensory chair benefits a significant number of care home residents living with dementia when used as part of a person-centered care approach. And two of the key features of the chair are the provision of soothing and evidence-based music cue music combined with automated rocking. Our primary aim was to really understand how the chair was being used and its impact as a non-pharma intervention on people living with dementia, living in care homes. Our results would really give us greater insights on which to develop future research studies going forward. So looking at the study description, this was a quantitative international online survey of clinicians. It was sent out in September 2019 to a random sample of 512 long-term care facilities who we knew were using the chair. Our survey was translated into 6 languages to optimize feedback, and we were delighted to receive a 34% response rate and believe this demonstrated that users really wanted to share their feedback with us. Before looking at the survey results, let's take a quick look at the chair to make sense of the feedback obtained from the clinicians. So depending on the objectives for use, the carer can select from 3 programs: relax, refresh, or comfort programs with varying amounts of recline, music volume, tempo changes, and rocking, which works in a swinging motion back and forward. The optional accessories form a U-shaped comfort cushion positioned around the person's abdomen and a weighted blanket to further cocoon the resident during use. So now we've taken a quick look at some of the chair features mentioned in the survey. Let's take a look at the results. We were keen to understand the type of facilities using the chair, where in the facility it is used, and how long the facilities had access to the chair. What we found out was that the chairs are being used in a range of long-term care facilities who each care for an average of 56 residents. And as expected, a high proportion, 84% of the facilities, were either memory, specialty dementia centres or nursing homes caring for people with dementia. A small number of daycare facilities also used the chair, but the majority of the usage was in long-term care facilities. Most of the chairs are used in common areas such as resident lounges or day rooms. However, the second most popular location for use of the chair is in the resident's own room. A smaller percentage are used in therapy, wellness or snoozling rooms where use of the chair may be combined with other therapeutic interventions. So now we know that the chair was primarily used in communal areas and in residents' rooms. We were keen to understand what percentage of time the chair spent in those locations. Carers confirmed the chair had spent 60% of available time in communal areas and 20% of time in residents' own rooms in the previous 3 months. So it'll be interesting to understand the drivers that help decision-making regarding the location of use. Does it really relate to carers wanting to keep the resident in view, or do other factors come into play? And that needs to be investigated further. So 90% of centres had access to 1 or 2 chairs for use across their facility, and half of the facilities had used the chairs between 1 to 3 years, so had gained a good level of experience of chair use. We then asked carers to share their primary reason for use of the chair, and they were given the opportunity to add any secondary objectives. Stage of dementia was identified for residents using the chair, and if chair use was incorporated into the resident's care plan. Primarily, carers used the chair with residents with a primary objective to decrease agitation, shouting, and other disruptive behaviours. They were also focused on improving the overall well-being and quality of care for their residents while reducing the level of antipsychotic medication needed or eliminating it altogether. When we look at the key populations, as we know, dementia progresses. As dementia progresses, disruptive behaviours usually increase, so the more frequent use of the chair with residents with moderate and severe dementia is not surprising, and links to the results in the previous slide that highlighted staff were primarily using the chair to reduce disruptive behaviours. As we can see here, the chair was always used or very often used with residents with moderate or severe dementia 80% of the time. What we also found was that 40% of facilities have integrated the chair into the residents' care plans, identifying it as a regular non-pharma intervention for use as part of their care approach for individual residents living with dementia. Use of the chair is frequently followed by nap or social time, then mealtime or bedtime, suggesting the chair is used to help calm residents by decreasing disruptive and agitated behaviours, which also ties back to the high use of the Relax program identified earlier in the survey. So then we move on to looking at use preferences. So we ask carers to comment on their use of programs, including music, in addition to optional accessories such as the U-shaped comfort cushion and weighted blanket. Overwhelmingly, 79% of respondents use the Relax program, where the chair reclines and rocks while both music volume and tempo decreases to help the resident relax. 51% prefer to use the Refresh program, where the chair gradually reclines, then raises after music volume and tempo decreases. It then up the resident refresh. The comfort program with no music is used less often, but often with residents who may want to use it prior to sleeping. The specially composed and built-in music is a very popular feature and ranks highly in terms of usefulness, along with the optional weighted blanket and U-shaped comfort cushion used to help cocoon the resident while in the chair. So we asked carers to comment on how long they believe the effect of use of the chair lasted, and we're keen to understand the impact on them in terms of how use of the chair impacted on the quality of care they perceived that they delivered and how it impacted their working environment. To really understand the value they placed in the chair, we asked if they would recommend its use to colleagues and gave the opportunity to share any written comments they would wish to make. When asked to what extent the use of the chair helped staff most, respondents believed it improved the quality of care that staff delivery frees up staff time and assists in creating a calmer, more pleasant environment for everyone. This study captured respondent verbatims on chair benefits and value provided to both staff and people with dementia in their care. Most survey responses focused on positive, calming effects, resulting in some measure of peace and tranquility for the person using the chair. The majority of residents confirmed that they believe the effects of use of the chair last up to 4 hours, but as we can see, almost 1/3 weren't sure. Understanding in more detail how long the effect of using the chair will last would be very useful to collect as part of a future clinical study. Assessing if a product or service has value to the user can be easily assessed by asking if they would recommend it to colleagues. In this survey, 9 out of 10 carers reported they would recommend use of the chair to a colleague. This seems like a strong endorsement for a non-pharmaceutical intervention used in the care of some people with dementia living in long-term care. This study captured respondent verbatims on the chair benefits and value provided to the staff. And as you can see, there are quotations there that really come from the heart of the carers looking after their residents. And most of them focused on the positive calming effects that resulted in some measure of peace and tranquility for the residents. So if you look at the key finding, this study benefits from sufficient power for quantitative analysis and also included a lot of qualitative information, giving carers the opportunity to provide written comments that they could feed back. The survey enjoyed international participation, and we believe that that resulted in a much richer data set. The key findings highlighted the chair was used mainly to help decrease agitation and other distressing behaviours, and to try to provide a calm environment for residents with mainly moderate and severe dementia. Staff also believe reduced antipsychotic medication was used, and the effects of using the chair typically last up to 4 hours, which obviously provides respite for all involved. So importantly, carers believe that use of the chair improves both the quality of care that they delivered, but also results in a more pleasant working environment for them and a calmer environment for other residents. So this study really helps to advance our understanding of another non-pharma therapy option, and provides quantitative information as well as qualitative information on the perceived benefits to the resident with dementia and their carer. So improved overall wellness for the resident and enhanced quality of care by the provider are two striking findings of the survey that may motivate other clinicians to evaluate this intervention and other non-pharma interventions going forward, and will provide benefit for residents with dementia. Thank you very much.
Okay, Debbie, thank you very much. Thank you for working your way through that. Anything that creates calmness for people with dementia has got to be a really good thing and reduces antipsychotics, so we'd all be in favour of that. Well, I'd like to thank all the speakers and all the presenters, actually. Thank you very much for taking the time and to share your abstracts and your thoughts. I would ask the presenters if at this stage, if you've got any comments or questions on any of the presentations that we've heard in this session. Catherine, you've unmuted yourself. Does that mean you? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I do. I had questions for two, but one of my questions was for Iracema, who I think has dropped off the call. Has she?
Yes, she has.
She has. So yeah. my second question was for Kate. I really enjoyed your presentation, Kate, on the arts program in Singapore, and in fact, I felt very much that I wanted to be there in some of those sessions because people looked as though they were having such a lot of fun. What I was interested in, and apologies if you did answer this question in your presentation, but I was interested as to whether the positive impact from that participatory arts program, whether it was sustained after people had finished the activity.
Yeah, so unfortunately for our study, we didn't look at the long-term effects of the benefits. So definitely this could be a future study, like future research could look into this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Catherine, thank you for that question and comment. Does anybody else want to ask any other questions or comment on any of the other presentations? Debbie?
Yes, could I just ask, I think it was Catherine who had the charter that she showed us. Catherine, could you just confirm where I could access that? Because I thought that was wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So you can find that on our website. So at alzheimers.org.nz.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yes.
Okay, great. Kate, Min-Jiuan, do you have any other questions?
No,
none for me. Thank you.
Okay. I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Well, in that case, we'll just wrap up. And again, I'll say thank you to all of you for your presentations. I know it's not a 5-minute job to prepare the presentations, and also the time you've taken today to share your presentations with us. Thank you very much. And I hope you'll all be dialing in for, that's an old-fashioned expression, I guess, these days, but dialing in for the ADI virtual conference in December. So Absolutely. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.